Hey, hello everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening for those of you who are calling in from different time zones. It's lovely to see people trickling in. I see Margarita, I see Shedron, Carolina, Yashpal, Freya, lovely to see you all joining.
I am.
Hello, Yashpal. So while we wait for more people to join, I always like to know where everybody's calling in from. So if you could write the country that you're calling in from in the chat, that would be great. We can see how internationally spread out we are. If the speakers could do the same, that would be really great as well. I can see Anita's joined. Great to see you, Anita. Let me get the chat up so I can see where everyone's coming from. So we've got Shedron in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm always so impressed with the people calling in from the US or from the Caribbean or South America, where it's, I think for you guys it's 7 a.m. Am I correct? Yes, very impressive. Kenya, Republic of Berlin. We've got France, UK, another person in Kenya. Love this. It always gives me a real thrill to see how spread out we are all over the world. And also, I know this is the third session of our Social and Green Month so far, and some of you have been attending our previous sessions. So if you have attended previous sessions, could you please just type yes into the chat? And if this is the first session you're attending, please type no into the chat, just to get a little bit of context. Oh, we've got lots of yeses. How exciting. Great. Okay, and we've obviously got some new people as well. Okay, so I think I'm going to kick off with my introduction, and I have to slightly apologize in advance for the people who have been to previous sessions. There will be a little bit of repetition in this introduction, but I'll try and keep it brief. So let me share my screen. And if you could give me a thumbs up or a nod just to say that you can see the screen. Great, thank you very much. All right, so welcome all of you to the third session of YBI Social and Green Month. This is something that was launched last year and is now in its second version. So we've got 4 sessions that we're running throughout April, which is dedicated to social and green entrepreneurship. So again, I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with YBI, but I know that there are some people who are a little bit more new to YBI. So I want to give a very brief introduction. So Youth Business International is a network of member organizations all around the world. You can see where we're geographically spread here, who all support young entrepreneurs in different ways. So some will provide capacity building, mentoring, training support. Others provide finance, and others a combination of many different types of support. So lots of different models of support for young entrepreneurs, kind of young underserved entrepreneurs around the world. So this is a little snapshot of where we are, and we have 3 core pillars of support that we provide to young entrepreneurs at YBI. So the first is around personal development, focusing on leadership. How do we really support and develop the leaders that are likely to be able to be successful and thrive throughout their entrepreneurship journey? How do we help build the mindset that will enable to do that, the resilience, the confidence, the self-belief, and so on. We also provide business development support. So how do we help develop the entrepreneurship skills, the financial skills and knowledge? How do we help entrepreneurs develop businesses with the right kind of legal frameworks and governance? And obviously, when we're looking at the social and green entrepreneurship context, that includes impact measurement. How do we support them to measure and communicate their social or environmental impact as well? And finally, we provide environmental facilitation. So really what we're looking at is how do we build ecosystems in which young entrepreneurs can thrive. So thinking about how obviously really it requires a joined up kind of collaborative ecosystem and support structures in order for young entrepreneurs to be able to thrive. We can't do it alone, and neither can entrepreneurs. And so really this month's events have mirrored these three pillars of support that we offer. The first session focused in on personal development. The second session that took place last week was all around business development. And today we're looking at environmental facilitation, which I'm very excited about. So again, for those of you who are kind of newer to social and green entrepreneurship, I just want to give a little bit of a snapshot to make sure that we are all aligned on what's meant by social and green enterprise. So really, we define social and green enterprises as businesses that are developed in order to tackle a social or environmental challenge. It's not just a branch of their work on the side, it's very much the core purpose for their existence. So that means that all of the business activities are driven by its impact mission. What makes them unique in a way, kind of setting them apart from sort of charities that rely on external donations and funding, is that really successful social or green enterprises have the potential to be financially sustainable in that they generate their own income, and therefore the potential to create long-term impact, long-term change. And finally, they are locally rooted often, the entrepreneurs, in their context, in the environment that they are really trying to support. And therefore, they're best placed to understand the problem they're trying to tackle and to design an effective solution. So we don't sort of believe that social and green entrepreneurship is the only way to tackle these big social or environmental challenges, but it's certainly an important piece in the puzzle. And yeah, we know that it can have real impact. But I think when we look at entrepreneurship in general, obviously it's extremely challenging to be a successful entrepreneur, especially when you're young, especially when you are underserved, when you don't necessarily have a lot of support available to you or networks on tap that can help you. And I think when we're looking at social and green entrepreneurship, this is almost more acute because it's more complex. You're looking at lots of different sort of facets of your business that you're trying to make work. So depending on what country and context you work in, there's a lot more, there's real varying support on offer to you, and the ecosystems around the world are really varying in their development. So in some countries, it might be that you have a lot of access to financial opportunities. You might be able to access mentors and experts quite readily. There'll be different training programs on offer that you can find locally. There might be policy that really supports and enables social and green entrepreneurship and provides tax breaks and all sorts of helpful things like that. And in other countries where social and green entrepreneurship is not really established as a sort of legal structure, it can be very, very challenging, and there's not much support on offer. So that's why this topic today that we're digging into, I think, is particularly pertinent. Just to give you a brief snapshot of our social and green month, our social and green work, so far at YBI. So it really kicked off about 1.5 years ago. We've been working with young entrepreneurs globally for over 20 years, but over the last sort of couple of years, it's become clearer that there's a real kind of need and an appetite from our members to be doing more to support social and green entrepreneurs. And I think this really reflects the fact that globally, we are growing an awareness of the need for business to be also tackling social and environmental challenges. So within the last 1.5 years, we've put out our social and green positioning paper, which shares kind of our position in where we feel that YBI can make a real change. We established our first social and green month, like I said, last year, where we ran a series of regional workshops and gathered a lot of insight from our members around what they wanted in terms of support and what their challenges were around social and green support for entrepreneurs. one of the major challenges that was raised through those regional discussions was the need for really good resources and kind of tools that they could use to support their members that would work in different contexts. So we also built our Social and Green Toolkit, which takes entrepreneurs through the journey of setting up and developing a successful social or green enterprise. And that's in its second iteration now, which we've just launched and will be piloted throughout this year with over 400 young social and green entrepreneurs globally. And we also launched a community of practice for our members to kind of share challenges, learn from each other, and support each other. So in terms of our Social and Green Month this year, we really want to bring together like-minded people who are working to develop social and green entrepreneurship. We know that it's not alone. It's not going to work if we just work alone, even within our membership. We need to be outward facing, connecting with organizations and institutions and individuals, doing great work to support social and green entrepreneurs globally in lots of different ways. You'll be hearing from entrepreneurs and experts. So we've got a really great panel that we'll be launching very soon, where you'll hear from people working in the ecosystem in different ways. We'll be exploring key challenges facing social and green entrepreneurs. And then also, crucially, it will help us shape a way forward so that we can really be focused in what we're doing as a network to support young social and green entrepreneurs to make sure we're meeting their needs as much as possible. Okay, again, sorry for the repetition for those who've done this in previous sessions already, but I would love to know who we've got on the call today. So if you could please type in the chat, if you are a green or social entrepreneur, type that in. If you're somebody who directly supports entrepreneurs, so it might be that you are a trainer, it might be that you're a mentor, that you provide finance, you're an investor or a convener, please just type in how you would describe yourself and the way that you support young social and green entrepreneurs. Or if you're here because you're just interested in the topic, but you don't necessarily work directly with young social and green entrepreneurs yourself, you can just type in interested. Okay, so Christina has written ecosystem builder and system changer. So this is why we have Christina as a panelist today. Excellent, thank you, Christina. We've got Shedron as a supporter. Petal is a social or green entrepreneur. That's very exciting to have you there, Petal. Trainer and mentor. We've got another direct supporter. We've got an entrepreneur and somebody who's interested. Yep, you can be all three. Ecosystem builder, youth training and support. Okay, so we've got a real mix of people on the call. Support young social entrepreneurs through Changemaker Exchange and build the ecosystem through the Possibilists. Excellent. And Nick is also on the panel, so you'll be hearing more from Nick in just a moment. Okay. While you're continuing to put in that information about who you are, I just wanted to ask one more question, which is, what do you hope to get from today's session? If you can kind of summarize that in a few words, what do you hope to get from today's session? Is it around learning? Is it around connecting with others? Is there a specific topic that you're interested in to do with ecosystem development? Is it maybe impact investment or policy or convening? Okay, so we've got network and information, networking and connection, identifying possible gaps within our programs. Great, thank you, everyone. Just to let you know, the format of this session is that we will soon be jumping into the panel discussion, which will be really, really interesting, and you'll gather a lot of information and insight through that. And then after the discussion, we will go into breakout rooms where we'll delve a bit more deeply into some of these topics, and you'll have an opportunity to connect and speak with each other. So hopefully we'll be able to hit a lot of those aims that you each have for what you're hoping to get from today's session. Okay, so without further ado, we're now going to jump into the panel discussion part of today. So I'm soon going to hand over to the panelists to introduce themselves. But before I do that, maybe I'll just run through very quickly who we have on the call. So I'll be moderating the call today. My name's Anna Hojnicka, for those of you who I haven't met yet. So I am the social and green lead at YBI. I come from a social entrepreneurship background myself, started as a social entrepreneur and then moved over to supporting social entrepreneurs and now kind of looking at more of a global sort of network perspective. We've got Cardell Ferguson, who is the general manager of Barbados Youth Business Trust, which is a member of YBI. Similarly, Ndungu, who is the executive director of Kapie, another YBI member based in Kenya. We've then got Nick McGurl, co-founder of the Possibilists and Changemaker Exchange. So Nick and Christina are our kind of external speakers today. We're very excited to have involved. They're kind of real experts in ecosystem building. So Christina is the Chief Market Development Officer at Global Steering Group for Impact Investment, so can talk from that kind of financial perspective as well. And then we're really excited to have Brittany Seeley with us today, who is our resident young social and green entrepreneur, calling in from the US. But yeah, I'm going to now hand over to each of you. I'll stop sharing my screen. To give a little bit more of an introduction to yourself. I think you've got about 2 minutes each, speakers, and then I'll jump into questions. So hopefully we can get you pinned up onto the screen so everyone can see you as you're talking, and we'll kick off with Brittany, who's first on my screen.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Or would I say good morning, because I'm from Barbados and I'm calling in from the eastern side of the US right now. It's wonderful to be here and to be sharing with you. I'm the founder and CEO at Work Consultancy, which is a social enterprise in Barbados with a vision to see the people of developing countries thrive. So that looks like doing a lot of project-based work so that we enhance sustainable development in different sectors, whether it be education reform, helping Barbadians secure purposeful jobs. And I'll share a bit later with you, but that in a nutshell is what I do.
Fabulous. Thank you, Brittany. Okay, next we have Nick on my screen.
Thanks so much, Anna, and yeah, awesome to be here as well. So for the past 10 and a bit years, I've been part of the core team at Changemaker Exchange, and our work is both at a micro level, directly supporting young social entrepreneurs and youth-led organizations on their journey, which can be a tough journey at times, and we try and make it a bit less tough. And then also at an ecosystem level through the Possibilists, which we initiated as an alliance of vision-aligned network organizations who support young social innovators, including One Young World, Obama Foundation, and YBI recently joined as well. And we run studies on the status quo for youth social entrepreneurship. And then together as the alliance, we take collective action based on the challenges that are surfaced. Yeah, my background a bit at the intersection always of youth and social innovation, and excited to be here today.
Excellent, thank you, Nick. And yeah, really kind of a convener at your core, so it's great to have you involved in the call. Okay, Ndungu is next.
Thank you, Anna. Hello, everybody. I am very glad to be here. I work for an organization called CAP Youth Empowerment Institute. It's an NGO. Our mandate is to provide skills and support for vulnerable young people so that they can find a living. They can either earn a living through a job or starting a business. We have been working in Kenya for the last 12 years now, although the program and the model we use has been adopted in many parts of the world, more than 10 different countries of the world. Essentially, it's a demand-led approach. We provide skills training only on the basis of opportunities that have been pre-identified. So we are sector agnostic. It doesn't matter the sector. Our first interest is whether that sector can yield opportunities for vulnerable young people to earn a living. The reason why we became so heavily involved in a social and green entrepreneurship space is exactly because of that pre-identified opportunities. In fact, we started from the agriculture side. I'll speak a little bit about that. We are still doing that, but we are increasingly having to evolve now so that we can respond to the challenge of climate change, but also so that we can help young people exploit opportunities that come alongside that challenge. So I'm very glad to be here and really looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ndungu, and I'm really looking forward to digging into some of that later in the conversation, especially around the work that you do with green entrepreneurs. Okay, over to Cardell.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Cardell Ferguson. I am the General Manager, as was told earlier, of the Barbados Youth Business Trust. We are a youth entrepreneurship organization that has been operating in Barbados for the past 30 years. We've been working with young persons, helping them to find productive lives. We will be extending our support to a wider cross-section so that we have a feeder and we have a value chain going forward. We also have a social enterprise incubator that we are also going to be extending to green. We've been operating the social enterprise incubator now since 2019, and we've seen great success. And so therefore our work is to ensure that we promote people development and we extend all of the impact that we've been having through all of our programs. So I look forward to having a more robust conversation with you throughout this panel.
Hey, thank you, Cardell. And finally, over to Christina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Christina. I run market development at the GSG. The GSG is a nonprofit organization, and our mission is really simple, is to ensure that there's significantly more capital that is flowing and invested into social and environmental impact. And the way that we do this, I mean, the most important way that we do this is by working with countries. So we work with countries and support them in establishing new national institutions that will have this exact same goal, driving more capital towards social and environmental impact in each and every country. So today we represent 36 countries and we work with another 30 plus countries around the world, helping them to create what we call national advisory boards for impact, that are institutions that are representative and inclusive of the entire ecosystem for impact in the countries. The demand side, working with the entrepreneurs, the intermediaries, every possible organization from the supply side, very importantly, the governments and policymakers, and also what we call other market builders, so networks, NGOs, civil society organizations, academic institutions, business service providers. So they come together, they create a national strategy and deliver very few but very transformational priorities that will lead towards more capital being invested into social and environmental impact. Usually these priorities are around policy change and new types of, impact vehicles or impact funds that may be missing in the markets. So that's me. And then, yeah, previously I have a background in co-founding an organization that was a network of incubators and accelerators, working with early stage social entrepreneurs that Anna has then led afterwards.
Brilliant. Thank you, Christina. And what an amazing panel we have. It was really quite inspiring to hear you each summarize what you do there. Okay, so we've got around, I'm going to say 40 minutes for this panel, possibly a bit less. There's a huge amount to discuss, and I want to try and get through as much as we possibly can. So I'm going to ask if the speakers can try to keep each answer relatively brief, although I don't want to cut you too short because I know there's a lot to say. So I'm going to start off with Brittany. So Brittany, as a young entrepreneur yourself, it's really kind of interesting to hear your direct experience of what it's like to be a social entrepreneur. And what I want to find out is kind of, particularly as a young social entrepreneur in Barbados, what is it like for young social and green entrepreneurs starting out? Is there sort of clear support on offer or not so much? Is there sort of policy that exists that helps you or not so much? And kind of what are some of the challenges that you face as a result of that type of ecosystem that you operate in?
Thanks, Anna. That's a pretty loaded question. So I'll try to summarize it as much as possible. Firstly, I would have founded Work Consultancy in 2019. And generally, there is an ecosystem of support for young entrepreneurs in Barbados, just not focused on social entrepreneurship. So I knew that my organization was different because it was very human-centric. The main focus wasn't just on making profits, etc. But I didn't know that social entrepreneurship even existed until I came across BYBT and their social enterprise incubator. And that's when they really showed me that what we're operating is a social enterprise. And so they were able to help refine our structure, give us better insight, see what opportunities are available, whether it be grant funding or other resources. And ultimately, we're using those resources to help others. Now, in Barbados, in terms of the legal structure and in terms of funding, and I would say tax funding, tax breaks, etc., is not very much available. What I'd had to do is go external and then come internal. So, for example, when we were looking for pro bono legal support, we became a member of Moving Worlds, which then gave us access to Lex Mundi Pro based in the UK, which then connected us to a local law firm in Barbados. So you can see how we then had to go external to then really come home. But they were even able to share that there's no legal framework for social enterprises in Barbados that exists at all. And so we're registered as a for-profit company.
Okay, and yeah, also speaks to the resilience I think that's required to kind of work your way through all of those different challenges and do it anyway. So yeah, very, very, very impressive. So over to Cardell, who runs BYBT that Brittany mentioned. So obviously you support, you know, social and green entrepreneurs throughout Barbados and in fact, kind of in the wider region. So you've been really working to kind of build this ecosystem for some time and being the driving force behind that. What are some of the biggest barriers that you see to social and green entrepreneurs being able to thrive? And what impact does that kind of have on them?
So carrying on from what Brittany said, because Brittany has spoken about two of the biggest challenges that the social and green entrepreneurs are facing in the region. That is of the legislative environment. There isn't one. So most of the businesses that are in social and green would have to register as a for-profit or a charity, which does not align with everything that they want to do as a social and green business. We have been advocating for some changes in the region. However, it's slow in coming. We've gotten some wins in Jamaica, and so we want to utilize some of those wins that we've been able to see in Jamaica to then use that as a basis on which we can use it across the region to advocate for that legal environment to be structured and more enabling for our social and green entrepreneurs. Another one is financing. There is a wide interest in providing financing for entrepreneurs. However, when it comes to social and green, and we have to talk about their varying cash flow and other nuances of social and green, businesses and banks don't understand those nuances and don't make any allowances for businesses that are in this field. So it's really a public awareness that has to happen that will bring to the fore the importance of social and green, the nuances of the industry, and how we can best support social and green businesses to thrive.
Okay, thank you, Kada. I think that paints a really kind of clear picture of what's going on in the region. So I'm going to move over to Christina now, who has more of a global kind of perspective and can possibly build on what's been shared already, in terms of what do you think are the major gaps in the ecosystem on a global level, which again sort of stops social and green entrepreneurs, brilliant social and green entrepreneurs, from being able to thrive, and where you think particularly kind of greater connection within the sector would have a big impact.
Well, thanks, Anna. It's I would say there's so many. So I think that perhaps looking at some of the things that we're doing, obviously our theory of change is that by making sure that the actors talk to each other and work together across the sectors and across silos is a very, very important starting point, because by doing that, people can better understand the opportunities that lie ahead, like in front of them, but that they haven't seen before. So, for example, as an example, there has been some work done by a bank in Kenya, actually, called KCB, that has done a lot of work to actually look at their portfolios, look at their clients, who they have today as clients, better do a kind of analysis and segmentation of the data that they have on their clients. And they suddenly understood that actually they had a lot of entrepreneurs that were doing really amazing work, for example, women entrepreneurs, but they were not looking at the data in the right way. And so by doing that, by changing a little bit some of their internal processes, but also training people internally, they were able to really much better address the needs of kind of small and growing entrepreneurs, but also expand significantly their portfolio of women-led businesses in Kenya. And so this work has now led to the fact that the SME lending portfolio for this bank is the second most profitable of their kind of services. And so I think that, you know, that there's sometimes not much needed, but there needs to be you know, kind of an initiative that or something that makes them tick, to really understand how you know, the different kind of parts can work together and collaborate. So that's maybe one. The second is I think what, you know, YBI and the YBI network and the organizations like that are doing is really important, is to elevate the voice and elevate the stories of these entrepreneurs, to show what they are doing, who they are, because sometimes I have to say, probably there is a bit of, you know, lack of knowledge and lack of awareness of the amazing work that is being delivered. And the third thing, which is super important, and again, things that you're probably already doing and needs to be scaled up and supported much more, is the business development services. Because as much as the impact and the mission are really core and crucial, if the business doesn't survive, it will not grow. And so supporting those businesses to be, you know, how to say, creating and generating the revenues that they need to grow, expand their businesses, expand their clientele, and all of the things that they need to really run a healthy, sustainable business is probably the most important thing to start with. And sometimes in many countries, business development services, well, you don't really know if you're an entrepreneur, if they're good or not. And so whether it's worthwhile paying for them or not. In some countries, there is really kind of a plethora of offerings between incubators, accelerators, fellowship programs, grants, and sometimes actually entrepreneurs are a little bit lost in you know, how they make the choice, what is really valuable for them in terms of business. And so helping entrepreneurs really kind of access what is really qualitative and what is really going to be a change maker for their own business where they're at is probably one of the most important things. Because then if the business is there and how to say, potentially is investable. I mean, again, depending on whether or not entrepreneurs want investment or need investment, but then they're able to much better, access the financial support that they need. So I think some of those are really, really important, but then there are very obvious systemic challenges as well around, the availability and the size of investments that are needed, as opposed to, what is today available in markets.
Okay, thank you. There's so much in that was really kind of substantive, really helpful stuff. So if I can maybe try and summarize. So on the one hand, it's important to get the social and green entrepreneurs into a position where they are investable and they're strong. And partly that's by providing great business development support. And there's a piece around signposting them to actual quality kind of resources and interventions. There's an awareness piece, which is how do we actually kind of raise awareness of the brilliant work that's being done, and making sure that those who can be, provide really helpful support know about what's being done, so they can be excited to connect with them. And finally, it is about connecting them and forging those sort of opportunities for collaboration. Which segues perfectly into my next question, which is to Nick, which is, again, I think really for a lot of what we're talking about, joining up and connecting the kind of key players within the ecosystem is so key, but how to do that is challenging. And obviously for you, convening and collaboration is very much in your DNA for Possibilists and Changemaker Exchange. So my question to you is, what have you learned about how to do collaboration well, particularly when you are looking at working with lots of different organizations and individuals, each with their own kind of, priorities and their own day jobs and so on? How do you get people to collaborate well, and what kind of moves it from conversation to action?
Okay, thanks. Great question. So for the last, I'd say, 11 years or so, we've been convening lots of different groups together for collective impact. And I think we've had some really good learnings around that, and learning from our own mess ups, if you like, at the beginning as well. And I think one thing a lot of people tend to do is try and rush or force collaborations. I've seen lots of organizations bringing people together and saying, let's collaborate, and assume that it's going to work because they have similar goals or they're working on a similar topic, but it's not like that. I don't think human beings are naturally so good at collaboration unless they're given the right conditions for it. So for us, a real key is to say that collaborations move at the speed of trust, and to slow down, take the time to build that trust among groups of stakeholders with all their idiosyncrasies and different motivations, etc. So a collaborative process for us is about, first of all, building really strong bonds on a very human level between stakeholders. It's then going into peer learning and looking at what each person is bringing in terms of their superpowers, their motivations, etc. And only then seeing a kind of fertile ground for collaboration. After those relationships have been built, after people know what each other are bringing, then you can move from that conversation to action. And for us, that's really part of a deep in-person process that we go through. And I think that's also, if you look at some of the research on that, it's also backed up. So Google did $1 million research project on figuring out why some of their teams are way more successful than others, called Project Aristotle. And it's not about who was on the team. It's not about what they're working on. It was all about the psychological safety in that team and the quality of relationships, people being able to be vulnerable together, etc. And it sounds soft, but I think it's really the key when you're looking at complex multi-sector coalition building, etc., is not to ignore that relationship building, trust building piece. And to be able to do that, I think another learning is to have really good facilitation for it. And that's why those kind of nodes, if you like, within the ecosystem, who are the ones convening, bringing people together, orchestrating, are absolutely super critical. And I think that good facilitation is kind of the software for good social change. If the initiatives are the programs, and you all know how your computer doesn't work very well when you need a software update. So yeah, I think good facilitation, relationship building, and trust are the kind of the cornerstones of good collaboration.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nick. And I love what you said. Collaboration moves at the speed of trust. That is, I think that's a great way of framing that. And interesting that, yeah, that Google research showed the kind of absolute crucial nature of the human kind of connections and that sort of, like you say, the stuff that can be described as soft. But in our first global Social and Green Month event, which focused on personal development, it became very clear that what can often be described as soft and soft skills and all the soft stuff is absolutely not soft. It's like critical, particularly when it comes to leadership and relationships and all of that. So yeah, brilliant. Okay, my next question is to Ndungu, and I think again this follows on quite well from some of what we were discussing. So Ndungu, you work with a lot of green entrepreneurs at Capier, especially working in agribusiness. So in your experience, how does the entrepreneurship world connect with the agribusiness world, and what are some of the challenges that you face around that?
Thank you very much. Like I said in my introduction, we got into youth and agriculture because we wanted to work in a sector that has potential opportunities for young people to earn a living, many young people. And agriculture, we identified it as one of them, but it is a sector that has challenges that are very different from other economic sectors. And because of those challenges, we have had to do things differently, which includes being here now having this conversation about green entrepreneurship. So for one, it's a sector that young people have turned away from. The average age of a Kenyan farmer today is 59. So that tells you already a lot of young people don't want to engage in agriculture, and they have good reasons for it, historical as well as present reasons for not wanting to be involved at all. So, however, of all the young people who come through our program, more than 60% of them say that they desire to own or run their own business one day. So the conclusion from these 2 points is that young people don't want to engage in farming. They don't want to be part of agriculture as it has been traditionally known in sub-Saharan Africa, which is broadly peasant agriculture. Agriculture, farming just to feed a family. But they do want to do business. They want to make a lot of money. They want to have a good name, big name. And so we started by changing not agriculture, but agribusiness. And one other thing has evolved. We started this work in 2016. One other thing has evolved, which is the whole question of climate change and the existential problem that it poses to the whole world. And actually to Kenya, it has been very obvious, very visible, very painfully so. We have, even today, 3 million Kenyans are going hungry, and they're able to point this to climate change. It turns out that young people want to join their peers across the world to save the world. They do. A lot of Kenyans actually do want to be involved in climate change. And many times what I hear from them is there something we can do more than just planting trees? We know tree planting is important, but surely there are other things. So the solution or the proposal we are making, and we make this all the time when we are doing the training now, is that it is possible to fulfill those desires by engaging in the green sector. First, from an entrepreneurship perspective, but also secondary by doing agriculture differently from the way other people have done it in the past. In Africa, we are now convinced that the heavy lifting for climate change mitigation and resilience will have to come from its farmers. And for that to happen, we have to have many young people piling into this sector. And the only way you can get them to do that is by offering them a solution that responds to their needs and to their desires and their aspirations. There are many challenges, of course, in entrepreneurship itself, but we are already seeing a lot of value for those young people who are able to engage in it, because first they get surprised that they are able to actually make good money. And today they are also able to actually be quite well regarded by society. They are providing a solution that people see immediately. But there's still a lot more that needs to be done. We have 4 million Kenyan youth today who are either unemployed or underemployed. The agriculture sector can employ half of them actually in the next 1 year. But for that to happen, we need to figure out a way to get a large number of them skilled and engaged in the sector, and then support them on a pathway to success, because that's what will draw their peers to also join the sector.
Thank you, Ndungu. And what a great kind of an illustration of both the need, the opportunity, and yeah, I think the fact that if you can combine, you know, huge market opportunity, also resource opportunity in terms of all of the all of the farmers, the agriculture that exists, and then kind of being able to tap into their motivation and their interests by showing them how there's an entrepreneurship opportunity there, then yeah, we can build something pretty transformative. I just want to ask you a follow-up question. I know that you've been working with TVET organizations, so basically vocational education institutions in Kenya, to try and build in some of the sort of green entrepreneurship curriculum into what they do. That's obviously an amazing example of how to join up the ecosystem and start to begin to solve some of these challenges. So I just want to find out, first of all, how you went about kind of forging that partnership, and what you hope to get from that.
Thank you very much. Yes, like I mentioned, one of the things we have concluded is that the problem we face, and I think the problem we all face, even in the green sector, is ultimately a numbers problem. It's not enough to have ideas that work very well. We must figure out a way of getting the largest number of people participate and to get the biggest impact in the shortest time. The young people are not going to wait. The world is not going to wait either. So some of the things we have been learning and applying, and including some that we have actually learned from the YBI network, is how to get large numbers of young people engaged and excited about an opportunity. But we have now to figure out a way of giving them skills with the same kind of numbers and supports, including mentorship, so that they can translate those skills from ideas in their minds to opportunities or to realistic businesses that they create and start to grow. For Kenya, one of the things that we have recognized is that need to create a pipeline that mobilizes young people, gives them the skills, and then channels them into the subsectors of this sector or into the sectors of the economy where they can benefit, but also benefit the country. The biggest one is the government skills delivery system called TVET, Technical and Vocational Education and Training System. In Kenya, it's pretty big. It's more than 2,800 institutions. It's possible to reach and train and support over 1.5 million young people per year, but it is not doing anything like that. And one of the reasons is it has not kept up with the pace of changing things, the way things are done. And so we have started introducing these ideas to partners within this sector, institutions that do skills training like we do. And we say, for example, the reason why young people come to your institutions is not just to learn, it's because they hope to gain something out of that learning. And if you ask them, the majority will say, either I hope to get a job, or I hope to start a business, or I hope to earn money at the end of it. The best way to do that is to make sure that you are engaging them first with things that they are passionate about, that's important, but also with things that have potential to lead them to realize that goal of earning a living. And we have been doing this now for the last 4 years. One of the toolkits that YBI has developed that we have been part of, we immediately identified it as a very good resource for supporting young people who want to translate an idea they learn in a lecture hall from the trainer into a business. And we have started working to convert that into two things. One, a curriculum for social entrepreneurship. It's going, believe it or not, it's going to be probably one of the few in Kenya. There has not been a lot of that done. But also number two, a support kit that a young person can use even when they don't have any external support, even when their institution is not very well equipped to help them to realize all the ideas they have in mind that they can use. Because most of these tools, again, can be adapted, can be applied in many, many different ways. It is something that is exciting me because I believe there is also, in addition to the challenges Kenya is facing, there is room now for change. Somebody said something about never wasting a crisis. We have a crisis here, but that crisis is bringing an opportunity. We have a government that is desperate for solutions and that's willing to take risks and to try new things. And so we intend to exploit that crisis for the time that it lasts.
Okay, thank you, Ndungu. I think we could talk the whole hour about this. It's so fascinating what you're doing and speaks to so much of what's really key in this conversation. And yeah, interesting that what you said kind of followed on from the point Christina made about the need for real business development strengthening in the toolkit, that being an important part of the offering. And then also something what Nick mentioned around building relationships and the discussions with the TVET organizations has been building over 4 years. So it's about building that trust and finding common kind of needs and priorities. So it's a really great kind of example of that. So thank you for sharing. So back to Brittany. Brittany, in spite of kind of being part of a social entrepreneurship ecosystem, which is more challenging and doesn't sort of readily offer a really easy environment to thrive in, you have taken great initiative to build your own network and access opportunities, which shows, again, great resilience, great kind of strength of character as well. Can you briefly tell us about sort of what you've done in that way, and particularly if there's kind of something specific that you can point to that's support that you've been able to access that's had a big impact on you and your organization?
I believe that all of the support that has been offered allowed Work Consultancy to be where it is today, and myself and my team as well, in terms of personal and professional development. My story started from birth because I was born into an enterprising household. My mother, she owned a small business along with working full-time, and so I saw that growing up. In secondary school, there was something called the social entrepreneurship $20 challenge. Sorry, not social entrepreneurship, but it was called the $20 challenge by the Barbados involved in that organization from a young age, then to participating in many other programs, the BYBT that I mentioned, accessing a loan through the Barbados Trust Fund, which is available to a lot of startup young entrepreneurs, and then going external. So being a member of the Queen's Commonwealth Network at one point, and then being a member of Moving Worlds. And more recently, I was recommended by Cardell Ferguson through the BYBT to be a part of the first ever African descendant social entrepreneurs exchange program, which is a mouthful in and of itself, but really and truly they brought together probably around 100 social entrepreneurs from every continent of the world, which is incredible. So that has then taken my network and tripled it, expanded it, I don't even know, beyond LEMS. And so utilizing all of those resources and that information, it allows me to just be a vessel to then be able to share this information with other young entrepreneurs and assist them in the ways that I can. So whether that's accessing grants, the information, a network of people to receive pro bono support, and also just exchanging experiences and having that vulnerable, real conversations with like-minded people is incredible.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you. And yeah, just great that you've kind of been able to grasp those opportunities and run with them and build on them. I'm very excited to hear more and see where you go, because yeah, I know it's going to be pretty exciting. So I think next we'll go back to Cardell, who you mentioned, Brittany, put you forward for that really great initiative. And as I mentioned before, Cardell, you've been really instrumental in building Youth Business Caribbean. So actually bringing together lots of different organizations throughout the whole region to build the ecosystem in the Caribbean. So how have you done that? How have you, that's a really good example of kind of bringing into life collaboration that's been really action oriented. How have you done that, and what sort of difference has it made for you to work in collaboration in that way?
So that goes back to that lovely saying that Nick gave about collaboration moving at the speed of trust. When we started, we were the first organization of its kind in the Caribbean. And what we sought to do was to create a pool of people who can work together to get things done. The Caribbean being a very small pot when we're talking in a global environment. So the BYBT has been able to support the establishment of youth business programs across the region. And because we were supporting these establishments and maintaining a relationship with everybody, providing technical support, providing assistance with their mentoring program, providing support in terms of reaching out to potential donors, all of those things, we created a bond in the Caribbean. So it became easier for us to start to work as a collective Youth Business Caribbean. What we also do is that we seek to ensure that when there is opportunities available to one country, we share these opportunities with others. Because at the end of the day, if we grow together, we are stronger. So when we decided to start our social incubator, we found funding, and in that funding, we worked within the system of the funding to ensure that the countries that are available to access these funding can do so. So we started our social enterprise incubator in Barbados, Dominica, and St. Lucia, cementing our relationship with these organizations. Again, with other projects, we would then identify the countries that can work together, and we work collaboratively with everybody when there is information to be shared. So it is that open sharing and that collaboration that has caused the ecosystem in the Caribbean to strengthen. And it is on that platform that we have been able to create Youth Business Caribbean, work together in a lot of the senses, find opportunities where we can always meet up, share, because in addition to the collaboration moving at the speed of trust, relationships are strengthened when they are done face to face. So you get to read the people, and we not only say that we are going to work in terms of business, and we find ways to collaborate outside of the modus operandi, the core of our doing, so that people feel comfortable with us. And then it is easier for us to move faster. So
Great.
All of what we've done in the Caribbean is based on relationship.
Okay, this is a strong theme coming through here. And yeah, also the face-to-face element of it being important. I hope that we can be doing more of that. I know that obviously the world has changed, and it is great that we can do so much virtually. It removes a lot of barriers that existed before, but yes, hopefully we'll be meeting in person at some point. Okay, I have two more questions before we go into the breakout rooms to Christina and to Nick. So I think I'll start with Nick's question, and this kind of builds on what from what Cardell was saying around what Cardell was proving really is the potential for individual organizations working together to have an influence on policy and to change systems. So when we look at especially kind of huge existential challenges like climate change that require great leadership and real joined up efforts globally on a huge scale. Do you think that it is still possible for individual organizations working together to be able to make change and to kind of influence? And if you have any kind of examples of collaboration that has had an impact in that space, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I think definitely individual organizations working together can affect great change. I think one example I would give, which shows both the amazing potential and also the limit of social enterprise in itself, is Fairphone. I don't know if you know it. It's a really cool social mobile phone, which is built from completely it's completely repairable. It's built on a circular economy mindset and from as fairly sourced materials as possible. Started it with a big vision and very quickly realized that even for them, they could only build that phone from, I think, 30% their materials because of how messed up the system is, because of how gold is sourced, lithium is sourced, cobalt is sourced, and it's just impossible to avoid those things like child labor, like conflict minerals, etc. So pretty quickly, they had to change their theory of change and move from being, okay, we just want to be a really cool social enterprise product and be an inspiration to that, to look at how can we go deeper to the root causes of this problem and think on a system level. And when you do that, you can only do that collaboratively. You can't change the system by yourself as one organization. So what they started doing is forming alliances around a lot of those materials. They formed the Fair Cobalt Alliance. They initiated it, got lots of other organizations involved to look at how can cobalt be then mined fairly throughout Congo and Uganda, etc. And that started to make a real difference. They started doing a similar thing for lithium, aluminium, and now they're looking both at multiple successful system-changing collaborations, and also then at influencing the big players, the Apples and the Samsungs, to change their own practices, because they're now also using those minds and in touch with those ecosystem players. So I think it's definitely possible, but I think we have to a little bit think beyond the social enterprise product service mindset and look at a systems mindset and a collaborative mindset to do that.
Nice. What a great example that is. Could you put the name of that into the chat, just so that people, I'm sure, will be interested to kind of follow up and find out more? That would be great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and last question to Christina, and I think this actually follows on from what you were saying before about some of the challenges and the gaps. But I know that what's often sort of shared is that there is a gap between the supply and the demand of funding, of finance for social and green, as well as lots of sort of businesses. But, you know, there are brilliant high potential social entrepreneurs and enterprises that exist that really struggle to access funding. And then on the other side, there are impact investors and funders that want to be able to find really great businesses to invest in and struggle to. So I suppose my question is, why do you think that gap exists, and what can be done to improve the situation?
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Unfortunately, this problem has been in existence for the past 1 or 2 decades, and we still haven't cracked it. So there's definitely a systemic issue around it. So I think that there's a couple, you know, that I maybe touched on, and also probably solutions that we haven't really looked at yet. One is, you know, getting those people together. They don't necessarily know each other. They don't, you know, see each other. And I think it's really important to, you know, for the investors to get to know and understand those entrepreneurs, and for the entrepreneurs also to better understand the needs of those investors. Sometimes actually, it's the fact that they talk about different, they talk different languages. So how do we get each other closer to the other's world, right? So for example, there is, a number of really successful programs where, they work with both the entrepreneurs and the investors over a period of time so that, they have this very structured program so that towards the end of the program, they might get, at least a couple of deals out of the program with the entrepreneurs, because they have really well understood the needs of the investors and curated the support to the entrepreneurs in a way that, after say 6 months, there is a potential deal happening. So I think it's about better understanding the needs and of each. The second is a definite structural problem around the size of the investments that are available in markets. It is, and that's a systemic issue that we and many other people are working on. How can we ensure that we can get those smaller ticket sizes, especially in emerging markets, available for the entrepreneurs that need it to grow their businesses? Well, there is the issue of the fact that the banks are not really doing their job, because only roughly 20% of SMEs in emerging markets are served by banks. So there is something around how we allow and ensure that banks are actually able to support the growth of the real economy instead of just investing in government bonds. And then the second is around the investment side. So how do we create an investment environment where there are those impact VC funds in markets that are able to do those smaller investments? And in many countries, those intermediaries don't exist, or maybe there is one or two, but there's certainly not enough of them. And so how do we create a market where there is maybe a fund of funds, so a larger pool of impact capital that is then able to structure and strengthen the intermediary market, that is then in turn able to invest into those smaller and growing social and environmental entrepreneurs. So that's unfortunately a much more long-term issue, and it's a market by market issue as well. And so that's why we very much believe in our theory of change, which is really about allowing and enabling each and every country and each and every local ecosystem to build these national institutions for themselves, so that they can work all together to change policies, to create these new maybe pools of capital that may be missing, so that the change accelerates by collaboration and by those people working together on solving the issues. And then finally, I think sometimes awareness. People, have a lot of work. There is a lot of information coming to them. So the more we can, shout about the amazing work and elevate that, kind of bring those stories and those cases to where people are at, that can help. And hopefully the more we see those examples, the more we are excited by it, and it can create a virtuous kind of a circle.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Well, there's a lot in there, a lot of challenge, but also a lot of inspiration coming through this discussion that shows that, we can actually, as sort of individuals, institutions, organizations, all sort of sharing a similar vision, come together to make real change. So on that note, we're going to go into our breakout rooms now. We've probably got about 10 minutes for this, so it's not very long, but hopefully we can just get a few ideas sharing anyway. And we'll come back into this main room at 20 past. So we're going to go into the breakout rooms, and the questions that you will be, the question that you'll be discussing is, what can a global network, or what can global networks like YBI do to help develop an ecosystem where social and green entrepreneurs can thrive? So, we've discussed a huge amount in terms of challenges, opportunities, and so on. When we think about global networks that have direct access to the organizations supporting entrepreneurs and to the entrepreneurs themselves, the social and green entrepreneurs doing great work, a network like YBI do to add real value in developing these ecosystems? Okay, that's the question. You'll be placed into your breakout room any second, and then we'll come back at 20 past and we'll feed back some of the ideas that have come out. Great. That was pretty quick. Yeah, we could have done with a bit more time, but definitely got some really interesting kind of initiatives, initial thoughts on the go. So thank you. So I'll just quickly feed back from my group some of the thoughts that came up. So one thought about what YBI could do in this area is that we have organizations in the YBI network who have made a difference in growing their ecosystems, in influencing policy, and you know, being able to achieve that. So it's about sharing, learning from that, capturing that kind of learning and sharing it throughout the network, and then also creating exchange opportunities. And Dungu mentioned that a lot of the entrepreneurs, kind of green entrepreneurs in Kenya, have a challenge of being able to access funding, which stops them from being able to kind of move out of the startup stage. So how can YBI help to kind of plug the gap here a little bit by using its voice and influence to direct funding to young entrepreneurs, and also to be able to educate the people with the money? I thought that was a really good way of putting it in terms of closing that gap. There was also a thought around obviously social and green still being an emerging industry, particularly in some kind of regions. So how can we find and source external experts that are able to share their best practice? And how can we kind of curate that and provide that? So for example, it could be around how we train entrepreneurs to measure their impact, especially when it comes to social and green, and be able to communicate that back. And then we also had a thought around somebody who's been involved in sustainability entrepreneurship, how you actually kind of resonate in the market. You know, how do you bridge the gap with your product and the market? And is there something that YBI can do to support there? Again, maybe around knowledge exchange, sharing experience from other members and entrepreneurs. Okay, I'll hand over to Daniela now, who is facilitating another of the breakout groups.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. We had quite an active discussion in our group, and in classic sort of Zoom style got cut off mid-sentence, but I'm hopeful that the people that were involved in that room will do some sort of follow-up discussion on the basis of that. And we hit some very similar points. First of all, around sort of the importance of connectivity and resource sharing, and the potential facilitation role of YBI as being able to play a collaboration role in making sure that the resources that exist and are available sort of on a global scale, and that we can sort of play a conduit role in getting those to entrepreneurs who are interested in green and social work. And then spent quite a lot of time sort of talking about investment and the need for funds, and the sort of increasing appetite for funding this sort of entrepreneurship, but also, you know, potentially like thresholds of investment being lower than traditional investors are interested in, and the importance of sort of demonstrating both profitability and extra offering of social and green businesses. And we also sort of touched on the point of the need for funding not being absent from also the need for business development for green and social entrepreneurs, and the need to sort of bundle those services together.
Excellent. It's a lot of great stuff in there. Thank you. And I've seen Christina's also linked to a list of valuable resources as well, which is great. Actually, that kind of speaks to what was just said. So thanks for linking there. And finally, over to Vicky.
So in our group, we sort of acknowledged that the ecosystem has changed a lot, sort of the past 5 to 10 years. And in some geographies, there's quite a lot of different information on offer for young social and green entrepreneurs. So the suggestions were to analyse that and plug the gaps where there is information and support missing, so with very specific offers, not necessarily, I guess, a broad approach, to also differentiate those offers. So to have offers that are that can be differentiated. So perhaps on an individual basis, where one young entrepreneur might need more of a focus on personal development support, whereas another might need focus on actual business development support. And then just to look at people more broadly and the support systems around them. So around their well-being, perhaps their personal finances, looking at them in a holistic way, not just through, very specific supports. We spoke about funding, of course, always a challenge. The things that YBI currently does are highly appreciated around sharing tools and resources that can be adapted locally and delivered in a way that suits local environments. We talked a lot about localized support. So YBI can play a convening role in bringing together key players locally, so that things can be adapted for local contexts. And that's all we had time for.
Brilliant. Oh, I'm impressed with what's been covered in 10 minutes. I think we've done well. There's a lot there. Okay, well, thank you so much, everyone. We're coming to the end of today's session, and God, what a great session it's been, with so much kind of really substantial, valuable insight gathered from everyone. So thank you to the speakers in particular. Thanks to all of you for attending as well. We will have our final session of our Social and Green Month taking place on Thursday. So it'll be the same time on Thursday. It will just be 1 hour though. Actually, all of you are welcome to join. So it's not just for the membership. It's, again, we'll be welcoming anyone who's been part of this to take part. I'm going to put a link into the chat where you can access that call if you wish. What we'll be doing in the final session is gathering all of the insights generated from these first 3 sessions, focusing on personal development, business development, and ecosystem building. We'll be kind of bringing it together, synthesizing it, really prioritizing what needs to take place and beginning to set out what YBI will be doing. We really want to kind of take action from all of this great stuff that's been shared. So if you are interested, and if you're kind of working with social and green entrepreneurs, or you're connected in some way, you're supporting, it would be wonderful to have you involved. And hopefully we can kind of take on board some of the great tips for effective collaboration that we've heard today, and begin to build those great relationships and build something really wonderful to go from this. Before I forget, I think Diane is going to post a poll, which will just be able to gather some quick feedback from you about today's session. So if you could just fill that out, that would be really appreciated. Otherwise, we'll be posting the recording of today's session as well on the YBI YouTube channel. So I can share the link to that when it's up. We've also got the links to the other sessions recordings as well, so you can watch those back if you're interested. And otherwise, I think we've got 1 minute to go. So I'm going to give you that minute back and just thank you again, and look forward to being in touch and continuing to work together going forward. Wishing everyone a really great day.
You too. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Lovely discussion. Thank you, Anna.
Thanks, Koda.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.